I died while crossing the road. Not in a war. Not while saving someone. Not because I discovered a government secret or offended a mysterious old man who turned out to be an immortal master. No, I died because I was checking my phone like an idiot. In my previous life, I was just an ordinary office worker. Nothing special. I was not a genius. I was not a scientist. I was not a billionaire. I was not the hidden heir to some ancient family. I was the kind of person who worked late, ate instant noodles too often, and told himself every Sunday night, "Next week, I will finally fix my life." Then Monday arrived and immediately ruined that plan. That night, I had stayed late again. My eyes hurt. My back hurt. My brain felt like it had been used as a floor mat. I walked across the road while checking one last message on my phone. The message was from my boss. Of course it was. I remember reading the first few words. "Can you quickly check?" That was all I saw. A horn sounded. Headlights flashed. And my final thought in my old life was not profound. It was not noble. It was not even emotional. My final thought was, "I swear, if you wanted me to check another spreadsheet." Then everything went white. When I opened my eyes again, I was staring at a straw ceiling. For a moment, I thought I had survived. Then I looked around. Mud walls. Broken wooden door. Cracked clay jar. Straw mat underneath me. A smell that could only be described as poverty mixed with damp socks. I stared at the ceiling again. This was not a hospital, unless hospitals had gone through a very aggressive budget cut. I tried to sit up. Pain exploded through my chest. My ribs screamed. My back cursed. My legs submitted a written complaint. I fell back onto the straw mat and made a sound that no adult man should ever make. It was somewhere between a groan, a cough, and a goat discovering taxes. That was when I noticed my hands. They were not my hands. My old hands had been office worker hands. Soft. Weak. Mostly used for typing, scrolling, and opening snack packets with more force than necessary. These hands were rough. Thin. Calloused. Covered in tiny cuts and dirt. These were the hands of someone who had fought the soil every day and lost most of the arguments. Then the memories came. Not mine. Someone else's. A name entered my head. Liang Chen. 24 years old. Farmer. Orphan. No wife. No children. No family. No money. No powerful relatives. No secret inheritance. No mysterious jade pendant. No hidden master. No cheat system. No spiritual root. No dragon bloodline. Nothing. I waited for a golden screen to appear in front of me. Nothing happened. I tried blinking. Still nothing. I whispered, "Status." The straw ceiling remained silent. I tried again. Open inventory? A spider crawled across the wall. So that was it. I had reincarnated into another world with no system. Even the heavens were cheap. More memories flooded in. Liang Chen lived in Qinghe village, a poor farming village near a small town called Qingshi. He had inherited a small field from his parents, but after they died, everything slowly fell apart. The villagers borrowed from him and never returned things. They underpaid him. They mocked him. They lied to him. And because Liang Chen had been too kind for his own good, he accepted everything. He was the type of man who would apologize to someone stepping on his foot. Then he would ask if their shoe was comfortable. I felt my eye twitch. This was not kindness. This was a public service announcement for bullying. Then came the final memory. A large man. A bamboo stick. Laughter. An irrigation ditch. A punch. Another punch. Grain sacks being taken away. Liang Chen crawling home. Liang Chen collapsing on this exact straw mat. Liang Chen dying alone. My body went cold. The owner of this body had not been sleeping. He had been dead. And somehow, I had woken up inside him. I lay there in silence for a long time. Then I looked around at everything I now owned. One broken hut. One cracked clay jar. One old hoe. One torn blanket. One half-dead field. 3 shriveled radishes in a basket. 0 copper coins. And one body that hurt when I breathed too confidently. I slowly closed my eyes. In my old life, I had often wished for a fresh start. Apparently, the heavens had heard me. Unfortunately, they had misunderstood the assignment. The first thing I did in my new life was not heroic. I did not swear revenge. I did not train martial arts. I did not run outside and shout at the sky. I crawled toward the water jar, very slowly, with great suffering. The clay jar was only a few steps away, but my body treated the journey like a mountain expedition. By the time I reached it, I was sweating. I lifted the lid. Inside was water. At least, I assumed it had once been water. Now it looked like mud had lost confidence and become liquid. Something small floated on the surface. I stared at it. It floated back. I had three choices: drink the water and possibly live, do not drink the water and definitely die, or ask the heavens for a refund. Since the heavens had already proven unreliable, I chose the water. I drank. The taste was difficult to describe. Imagine dirt. Now imagine old dirt. Now imagine that old dirt had been offended and decided to fight back. That was the taste. I coughed so hard my ribs threatened to leave my body. After a while, my stomach growled. I looked at the three radishes. They looked worse than the water. One of them was twisted. One had a suspicious dent. One looked like it had already given up on reincarnation. I picked up the least depressing radish. It was small, wrinkled, and covered in dirt. I wiped it against my sleeve. Then I realized my sleeve was also dirty. So now the radish had not become cleaner. It had simply changed dirt departments. I took a bite. It was bitter. Very bitter. The type of bitter that made you wonder whether the vegetable was personally angry at you. I chewed slowly and whispered, "This is food only because nobody has sued it yet." My stomach disagreed and demanded more. So I ate. That was my first meal in another world. Mud water and a criminal radish. Current assets after breakfast: 0 copper coins, 2.5 radishes, 1 cracked water jar, 1 broken hut, 1 half-dead field, 1 body with unknown warranty status. I had officially started from below zero. By afternoon, I finally managed to stand. I shuffled outside like an old man borrowing a body from a scarecrow. Chinga village stretched out in front of me. Small mud houses, straw roofs, dusty paths, wooden fences, smoke rising from cooking fires, chickens walking around like they owned property, children running barefoot, old men sitting under a tree, judging everyone with the confidence of people who had already done their work 50 years ago. A few villagers saw me and stopped. One woman dropped the vegetables she was washing. A child pointed at me and shouted, "Mother, Liang Chen is alive." His mother smacked the back of his head and whispered, "Don't point at unlucky people." I smiled weakly. Good to know. Not even one day back from death, and I had already become a local superstition. I ignored them and walked to the back of my hut. That was where Liang Chen's field was. The field was small, maybe 1 mu of land. In my modern mind, I struggled with ancient measurements, but based on memory, it was enough to feed a poor farmer if managed properly. Unfortunately, this field had not been managed properly. It looked like a battlefield where the vegetables had surrendered. The soil was uneven. Some sections were dry and cracked. Some sections were muddy and sour-smelling. Weeds grew everywhere. Seedlings had been planted too close together in some places and too far apart in others. Weak plants leaned sideways. Leaves had holes from pests. Rotting roots showed in one wet patch. Dry stems stood in another. I stared at it for a long moment. At first I thought, I am doomed. Then I looked closer. And slowly, something changed. The field was bad. But it was not dead. That mattered. In my old life, I had not been a farmer. But in high school, I had once become strangely obsessed with growing vegetables. It started as a science project. We were supposed to grow bean sprouts and record their growth. Most students wrote 3 lazy lines and forgot about it. I became obsessed. I tested soil. I tested spacing. I tested watering times. I made compost in my parents' backyard and almost got banned from family gatherings because of the smell. Later, in university, I grew herbs and vegetables in pots. Tomatoes, chilies, spring onions, mint, coriander. Not because I was some genius agriculturist, because I was broke and thought growing food myself would save money. It did not. I spent more money on pots, soil, and failed seeds than I ever saved on vegetables. But I learned things. Simple things. Useful things. Plants needed space. Soil needed air. Wet roots could rot. Dry roots could starve. Weeds stole nutrients. Compost mattered. Pests hated ash and certain strong smells. Seed quality mattered. Watering at the wrong time wasted effort. A field was not magic. It was a system, and Liang Chen's system had been terrible. I crouched down and touched the soil. It was compacted, hard on top, heavy underneath. The old Liang Chen had planted desperately, watered unevenly, and hoped the heavens would help. The heavens had not. I looked at the field again. For the first time since waking up, I felt something other than panic. I felt possibility. Not wealth yet. Not success. Not even confidence. Just possibility. I whispered, "You're not dead." The field, being a field, did not answer. But the crow on the fence did. It cawed loudly. I turned and looked at it. "Do not start." The crow cawed again. I had been in this world less than a day, and even birds were already giving feedback. That evening, I began making a plan. In my old life, whenever things went wrong, I made lists. Lists made problems look smaller. Sometimes they were still huge, but at least they looked organized while ruining your life. I scratched marks onto a flat piece of wood with charcoal. Current condition: body, damaged. Food, 2.5 radishes. Money, 0. Water, suspicious. Field, bad but alive. Enemy, Hu Bao. Time before Hu Bao returns. Unknown, but probably not long. I searched Liang Chen's memories. Hu Bao was the village bully. He was strong, loud, and had the moral depth of a puddle. He had beaten Liang Chen and taken his grain. The reason was simple. Liang Chen had owed him grain. Or rather, Hu Bao claimed Liang Chen owed him grain. In a poor village, debt was often whatever the stronger person remembered loudly enough. Hu Bao would come back soon. If I had no crops, no money, and no plan, he would take whatever was left, which at this point was mostly my dignity and 2 radishes. I needed results quickly. Not a huge harvest, just enough to survive, bargain, and build time. My first goal was simple: make the field produce something saleable within a few weeks. That meant focusing on fast-growing greens, existing weak vegetables, and anything edible already growing near the field. I did not need miracles. I needed small wins. I divided the field into sections. Section 1, savable seedlings. Section 2, damaged plants for animal feed or compost. Section 3, weed clearing. Section 4, compost pit. Section 5, fast greens. I looked at the charcoal marks and nodded. It was not impressive, but it was a plan, and a plan was better than lying on a straw mat waiting for the local bully to collect my remaining bones. The next morning, I learned that farming while injured was a form of punishment invented by demons. I pulled weeds for half an hour. Then I sat down like a defeated old man. My hands trembled. My back ached. My ribs complained. The crow watched from the fence. I pointed at it with muddy fingers. "You contribute nothing." It cawed. I took that as disagreement. I needed help. Unfortunately, I had no money. In the modern world, this would have been a serious hiring issue. In Qinghe village, it meant I needed to find someone hungry enough to accept unusual payment. That person appeared around noon. A teenage village boy with messy hair, dusty clothes, and sharp, curious eyes stood near my field, watching me struggle with a hoe. His name appeared in Liang Chen's memories. Sanzi. People called him that because he was the 3rd son of his family. Ancient naming could be brutally efficient. By the time parents reached the 3rd child, creativity had apparently gone to fetch water and never returned. Sanzi stared at me for a while. Then he said, "Brother Liang, are you farming or losing a fight with the ground?" I stopped. The hoe was still stuck in the soil. My hands were shaking. Sweat ran down my back. I wanted to say something dignified. Instead, I said, "Both." Sanzi came closer and looked at the field. "You are moving the weeds into piles." "Yes." "Why?" "To make compost." "What is compost?" "Rotten things that become soil food." Sanzi's face changed. "You are feeding the soil garbage?" "Not garbage. Plant waste." He looked at me, then at the field. then back at me. Hu Bao really hit your head badly. I sighed. Do you want to earn food? His eyes brightened immediately. What food? I checked my assets. 2 radishes remained. One of them looked like it had been emotionally damaged. I held it up. Sanzi stared. That is not food. It is food adjacent. It looks old. It has experience. It is ugly. So are many useful things. Sanzi thought about that. How much work? Help me pull weeds and carry water until sunset. For 1 radish? Half now, half later. He narrowed his eyes. This boy had negotiation instincts. Good. Dangerous, but good. What if you die before later? I stared at him. He stared back. Children in this era were too practical. If I die, I said, you may take the other half from my basket after I stop breathing. Sanzi looked around my hut and field. What basket? You only have sad radishes. I looked too. Fair question. Fine. Whole radish after work. 2 radishes. I only have 2. Then 1.5. 1. 1.25. Who taught you fractions? Hunger. I respected that. We settled on 1 radish and future payment if the field improved. Sanzi began working. He was faster than me. Much faster. Annoyingly faster. He pulled weeds, carried them, fetched water, and asked questions the entire time. Why do plants need space? Why do roots rot? Why not water at noon? Why are you burying ash near the plants? Why do you talk to vegetables? I explained as much as I could. Simple things. Nothing magical. Clear weeds. Loosen soil. Keep roots from drowning. Keep moisture steady. Use ash carefully to discourage pests. Keep good plants. Remove weak ones if they steal space. Sanzi listened, then nodded like he had understood everything. Then he pointed at a dying seedling and said, "This one looks like you yesterday." I looked at it. He was not wrong. By the 3rd day, the villagers noticed. Not because the field had improved dramatically. It had not. But because I was acting strangely. The old Liang Chen had been passive. Quiet. Apologetic. The new Liang Chen was sorting weeds into piles, moving seedlings, building raised rows, boiling water, and arguing with a crow. In a village with limited entertainment, this was major news. Annie Wu arrived at my field with a basket on her hip and suspicion in her eyes. Annie Wu was a middle-aged village woman with the energy of someone who could start a rumor, finish breakfast, and win an argument before sunrise. She stood at the edge of the field and stared at me. "Liang Chen," she said, "what are you doing?" I was kneeling beside a compost pit. My hands were covered in dirt. Sanzi was standing nearby, holding a bundle of weeds. The crow was watching from the fence like an unpaid supervisor. I said, "Improving the soil." Annie Wu looked at the compost pit. "You dug a hole?" "Yes." "You put weeds in the hole?" "Yes." "And you call this improving?" "Yes." She stared at me for a long time. Then she turned to Sanzi. "Did he hit his head?" Sanzi nodded immediately. I looked at him. He shrugged. "Maybe." Auntie Wu sighed. "If you are hungry, eat porridge. Do not start a funeral ceremony for the dirt." Sanzi laughed. I continued working. Auntie Wu watched for another moment, then noticed something near the hut. My old sickle. Broken. Her eyes narrowed. "Liang Chen, that sickle belongs to me." Memories surfaced. Auntie Wu had borrowed the sickle from Liang Chen weeks ago, cracked the handle, then claimed he had borrowed it from her. The old Liang Chen had accepted the blame. The new Liang Chen had spent too many years in offices to fear paperwork. Or in this case, charcoal marks. I wiped my hands and stood slowly. "Annie Wu," I said politely, "from today onward, I am recording all borrowed tools." She blinked. "Recording?" I lifted a wooden board. On it were marks. Tool. Borrower. Date. Returned or not. Condition. Annie Wu stared at the board like it was a demon talisman. Sanzi leaned closer. "Brother Liang, you made a board to stop people lying?" "Not stop," I said. "Reduce." Sanzi nodded seriously. "So people can still lie, but with more effort." "Exactly." Uncle Zhao, who had been walking nearby, stopped to watch. He was one of the respected older men in the village. Not rich, not powerful, just old, calm, and difficult to accuse of nonsense. Perfect witness material. I bowed slightly. Uncle Zhao, since everyone respects you, would you be willing to witness tool borrowing records from now on? Uncle Zhao stroked his short gray beard. His expression became thoughtful. He clearly enjoyed being called respected. Men in every era were vulnerable to job titles. Records prevent disputes, he said. Andy Wu's face stiffened. The villagers nearby began whispering. I smiled politely. Annie Wu has an excellent memory. I am sure she remembers borrowing the sickle after the last rain. Annie Wu opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. Sanzi whispered, Brother Liang, her mouth is moving, but no words are coming. I nearly laughed. Annie Wu glared at him. He hid behind me, which was useless because I was thinner than a door plank. Finally, Annie Wu coughed. I may have seen a sickle near my shed. Wonderful, I said. When it returns, we will mark the matter settled. Annie Wu left without another word. Uncle Zhao watched me carefully. Then he looked at the field. You are different after waking. I smiled. Almost dying teaches a man many things. Technically true. Dying fully had taught me even more. On the 5th day, Hu Bao came. I heard him before I saw him. Loud footsteps. Louder voice. 2 followers laughing behind him. Hu Bao was a broad-shouldered village bully with a bamboo stick resting on his shoulder and an expression that suggested thinking was something he outsourced. He stopped at the edge of my field. Well, well, he said. The dead man is farming. I straightened slowly. My ribs still hurt. My legs were weak. But I had expected this. Sanzi immediately stepped behind a fence post. Loyalty had limits. Hu Bao looked at my field, then at the weed piles, then at the compost pit. What is this mess? Future harvest, I said. His followers laughed. Hu Bao smiled. You owe grain. I know. Then pay. I cannot pay today. His smile disappeared. Sanzi whispered from behind the fence. This is where he hits you. I ignored him. A few villagers had gathered nearby. Andy Wu was there. Uncle Zhao stood with his hands behind his back. Good. Witnesses. I pointed at the field. If you take from me today, you get nothing useful. A few weak plants, damaged vegetables, maybe 2 radishes with emotional problems. The villagers murmured. Hu Bao's eyes narrowed. But if you give me until the first full harvest, I can pay 3 baskets. Hu Bao paused. Greed entered his face before understanding did. 3 baskets sounded better than 1. I continued, and Uncle Zhao can witness it. 3 baskets from the first full harvest. Not because I refuse payment, but because I want Brother Hu to receive more. Hu Bao looked at Uncle Zhao. Uncle Zhao said calmly, a public promise is better than a private beating. That was exactly the kind of old man sentence that sounded wise because it was slow. The villagers nodded. Hu Bao's followers looked confused. One whispered, 3 baskets is more than 1. The other nodded like he had discovered mathematics. Hu Bao glared at them, then looked back at me. You think you are clever now? No, I said. I think vegetables need time. The crow cawed from the fence. Everyone looked at it. I chose to interpret that as support. Hu Bao stepped closer. For a moment, I thought he would beat me anyway. Then he snorted. First full harvest. 3 baskets. I bowed slightly. Witnessed. He pointed his bamboo stick at me. If you cheat me, I break more than your ribs. I smiled politely. Then I will make sure the vegetables grow honestly. Sanzi whispered, Can vegetables lie? I whispered back, Not now. Hu Bao left. The villagers slowly dispersed. Uncle Zhao looked at me. You used his greed to buy time. I looked at the field. I used 3 future baskets to save my present body. Uncle Zhao chuckled. Sanzi came out from behind the fence. Brother Liang, does this mean we need to grow 3 baskets? Yes. What happens if we only grow 2? Then you hide me. He thought about it. For how much? I stared at him. This boy was learning too fast. The next 2 weeks were painful. Not exciting. Not dramatic. Painful. Every morning, I woke up before sunrise. Sanzi arrived soon after, usually chewing something that did not belong to him. We pulled weeds. turned soil, moved seedlings, built raised rows, collected ash from cooking fires, mixed plant waste into the compost pit, watered early and late, not under the harshest sun, removed leaves eaten by pests, covered young plants from too much wind, saved the strongest seedlings, used damaged leaves for soup. I made mistakes, many mistakes. One patch became too dry. Another became too wet. Sanzi overwatered a row and proudly announced, "They looked thirsty." I told him plants were not ducks. He told me I should have explained that earlier. Annie Wu came by often. At first she mocked us. Then she watched. Then she asked questions. Then she pretended she was not asking questions. "What is that ash for?" she said one morning. "Pests." I did not ask. "You did." I was speaking to myself. "Then yourself is very curious." She huffed and left. But the next day, I saw ash sprinkled near her own cabbage patch. Progress. Uncle Zhao also came by. He rarely spoke. He just watched the field. Old men had a talent for looking like they knew something while saying nothing. It was an efficient lifestyle. By the end of the second week, the field had changed. Not magically, not like a heavenly miracle, but enough. The soil was looser. The rows were cleaner. The plants had space. The stronger greens stood upright. Fewer leaves were damaged. Water no longer pooled in the low patch. The compost pit began to heat and break down. Most importantly, the first fast greens were ready. Small, but clean, even, healthy. I counted them carefully. First small harvest. 26 small bundles possible. 3 baskets owed to Hu Bao from the first full harvest, not necessarily today's greens. Sellable bundles today, 20. Damaged leaves, soup. Reserve seed plants, 2 small patches. Current money, still 0. But for the first time, I had inventory. I stared at the bundles of greens and felt something warm in my chest. Hope. Then Sanzi picked one up and said, "They look less sad than before." I took a deep breath. Praise came in many forms. We did not take the greens to town immediately. That would be foolish. I had no reputation, no transport, no market stall, no money to pay fees. So first, we tested the village. I washed the greens in boiled and cooled water. Sanzi thought this was excessive. "People wash vegetables before cooking," he said. "Some do. Some do badly. They are vegetables. They are trust. They are leaves. They are clean leaves." He looked at me for a long moment. "Brother Liang, you talk like someone selling expensive leaves." I smiled. "Exactly. We sorted the greens into 3 sizes. Large bundles, small bundles, soup leaves. Then we tied them with straw. Simple, clean, consistent. I placed them on a cloth near the village well. No shouting, no begging, just arranged goods. Annie Wu came first. Of course she did. She inspected the bundles. "They are small. They are clean. They are still small. Small households exist." Sanzi whispered. "She lives alone. Her house is small." Annie Wu glared. I cleared my throat. 2 copper for a large bundle. 1 copper for a small bundle. Damaged soup leaves are half copper equivalent if traded. Annie Wu nearly dropped the greens. 2 copper? Ordinary greens are 1. These are sorted, washed and tied. Less dirt, less waste, easier cooking. She looked offended. Then she looked at the greens again. Then she picked up one of the small bundles. 1 copper. I nodded. First sale. 1 copper. It felt ridiculous how happy I was. In my old life, 1 copper would not buy anything. Here it sounded like music. Auntie Wu walked away muttering, "Too expensive." But she did not put the bundle back. That was the important part. The second buyer was an old widow who wanted soup greens. The third was a young mother who liked that the leaves were already sorted. Then Uncle Zhao bought a large bundle. Not because he needed it, because everyone was watching. That old man understood influence. By sunset, we had sold or traded 14 portions. Money earned. Large bundles. 5 sold at 2 copper equals 10 copper. Small bundles. 7 sold at 1 copper equals 7 copper. Soup leaf trades. 2 portions exchanged for 1 egg. Total cash, 17 copper. Goods received, 1 egg. Costs, Sanzi payment, 2 copper and 1 soup portion. Rope for tying bundles, 1 copper. Net cash remaining, 14 copper. I stared at the coins in my palm. 14 copper. It was not wealth. It was not even comfort. But it was the first money I had earned in this world. Not borrowed. Not stolen. Not begged. Earned. I looked at Sanzi. He looked at the coins. Then at me. Brother Liang, are we rich? I closed my fist around the copper. No. He nodded. Still poor. Very. But less poor. I smiled. Yes. Less poor. Sanzi grinned. Less poor is good. I looked at the field, the hut, the village, and the road leading toward town. Less poor was only the beginning. The next step was preservation. Fresh greens sold quickly, but they also spoiled quickly. Spoiled vegetables were not assets. They were future compost with attitude. I needed goods that lasted longer. My first thought was pickling. Then I remembered one important problem. Salt. In this world, salt was not something poor people casually sprinkled on food while complaining about flavor. Salt was money. Salt was tax. Salt was controlled by people with permits, guards, ledgers, and smiles that made honest people nervous. The salt in Annie Wu's kitchen was probably guarded more carefully than her grandchildren. So pickling was impossible for now. That left drying. Cheap. Slow. Annoying. But possible. In my old life, I had dried herbs on windowsills and failed enough backyard experiments to know one thing. Moisture was the enemy. If greens were dried badly, they would not become preserved food. They would become mold with confidence. So I kept it simple. Wash carefully. Shake off the water. Spread thinly. Keep them off the dirt. Dry them under the sun. Finish them near gentle heat, not direct flame. Turn them often. Throw away anything that smelled wrong. Sanzi watched me spread the greens on a woven tray. Brother Liang, why are you making the leaves smaller and uglier? I am drying them. They look dead. They are not dead. They are preserved. They look dead. They are useful. Dead-looking useful leaves? I looked at him. Say that to customers, and I will pay you less. He immediately became serious. These dried greens look very alive. Too late. The first dried batch was small, very small. But it worked. The greens became lighter, darker, and easier to carry. They were no longer pretty, but they had value. Fresh greens were for households cooking today. Dried greens were for travelers, inns, poor families, and anyone who could not afford to waste food. That mattered. I began tracking everything. Wooden board records. Fresh bundles sold, 12. Soup portions traded, 2. Copper earned, 17. Net cash, 14. Drying batch, 8 small portions. Pickling, impossible until salt access improves. Seed patch, surviving. Hu Bao dead, 3 baskets due from the first full harvest. Sanzi pointed at the board. Brother Liang, why write everything? Because memory lies. He thought about it. People lie more. That too. Can the board lie? Only if I write badly. He nodded. Then I will watch you. I had created my first little bookkeeper. Payment pending. Terrifying. On the 3rd market day after my first village sale, I decided to go to Qingshu town. This was risky. Town markets had stall fees, stronger competition, and people who cared less about Liang Chen's sad village reputation. But they also had more money. We carried 12 fresh bundles, 8 small dried green packets, 4 mixed cooking bundles made from smaller but clean leaves. Total goods value target. Fresh bundles. 2 copper each equals 24 copper. Dried packets. 3 copper each equals 24 copper. Mixed cooking bundles. 2 copper each equals 8 copper. Total possible. 56 copper. Costs expected. Town entry/stall space. 5 to 8 copper. Food for Sanzi. Unknown, but emotionally unavoidable. I hid most of my copper in my waistband and carried only a few coins openly. Sanzi asked why. Because if people see all your money, they start thinking of ways to make it their money. He looked impressed. Is that wisdom? No. Experience from my previous life. What kind of experience? The kind where smiling people took your time, your sleep, and somehow made you thank them for it. Sanzi shivered. That sounds worse than Hu Bao. Sometimes, Qingshu town was much larger than Qinghe village. Stone-paved streets, wooden shops, food stalls, fabric sellers, medicine shops, tea houses, porters carrying goods, merchants shouting prices, donkeys expressing opinions. The smell of cooked food nearly made me cry. In Qinghe village, meals were survival. In town, food had ambition. We found a small corner near the vegetable sellers. The market manager demanded 6 copper. I nearly fainted. 6 copper just to stand somewhere? Ancient business was already inventing rent. I paid. Remaining cash after fee, 8 copper. Sanzi looked worried. Brother Liang, if we sell nothing, we are poorer. Correct. Should we go home? No. Why? Because fear is free. The stall fee was not. He nodded. That makes sense, but also sounds stupid. Many business decisions are like that. At first, customers ignored us. Why would they care? We were just 2 poor villagers with greens. Other sellers had larger piles, louder voices, and better spots. Sanzi looked nervous. I studied the market. Most sellers simply piled goods. Cabbage here, greens there, onions there. Customers picked through them. Dirty leaves mixed with clean leaves. Damaged vegetables mixed with good ones. Weights were argued over. Prices changed depending on mood. It was chaos. Useful chaos. I rearranged our goods. Fresh cooking bundles on one side. Dried soup greens in small tied packets. Soup portions together. Not much inventory, but clean, clear, readable. Then I changed my pitch. I did not shout. Fresh greens. Everyone shouted that. I said to passing customers. Clean soup greens, already sorted. Most ignored me. A few glanced over. Then I added. Less waste. No damaged leaves hidden underneath. That made an older woman stop. She looked at my bundles. How much? 2 copper. Too expensive. Yes. She froze. Sanzi looked at me like I had gone insane. I continued. Ordinary greens are cheaper. These are for people who do not want to throw away half the bundle after getting home. The woman picked up a bundle. Turned it. Checked the leaves. No damaged ones hidden. Her expression changed slightly. 1 copper. 2. 1.5. 2. But I add a soup portion. She thought about it. Then nodded. First town sale. 2 copper. Plus, 1 soup portion included. Sanzi's eyes widened like I had performed sorcery. The old woman walked away with the bundle. A nearby customer watched. Then another. Trust was strange. One buyer made the second buyer braver. By mid-afternoon, we had sold. Fresh bundles. 10 out of 12 equals 20 copper. Mixed cooking bundles. 4 out of 4 equals 8 copper. Dried packets. 4 out of 8 equals 12 copper. That was already better than I expected. But near the end of the market, a man from a small inn stopped by. He was buying cheap vegetables in bulk. He picked up one of the dried green packets. What is this? Dried soup greens, I said. Light, easy to store, quick for broth. He sniffed it. It is not pretty. No, I said. Pretty food is for banquets. Useful food is for kitchens. His expression changed slightly. That line had landed. How long does it last? Longer than fresh greens, if kept dry. He looked interested. Inns needed food that did not spoil quickly. Travelers wanted warm soup. Poor guests still wanted something warm in their stomachs. This was a real customer. He bought the remaining 4 dried packets. 12 copper. By the time the market ended, our sales were fresh bundles. 10 sold equals 20 copper. Mixed cooking bundles. 4 sold equals 8 copper. Dried packets. 8 sold equals 24 copper. Total market revenue. 52 copper. Minus stall fee. 6 copper. Food and water during the market day. 3 copper. Net cash from town. 43 copper. Cash before trip. 14 copper. Total cash after trip. 57 copper. I held the coins in my hand that evening and felt a strange calm. 57 copper. Still not rich. Still not safe. But no longer helpless. Sanzi looked at the coins. Brother Liang, are we rich now? No. Less poor. Much less poor. He grinned. Can much less poor buy buns? That depends. On what? Whether the accountant approves. He looked offended. I am the accountant. That is the problem. I thought the day was over. Then she appeared. A young woman stood near the edge of the market, beside a merchant cart. She wore pale blue and white robes, clean but practical, with a simple hair ornament that looked expensive without shouting about it. Her posture was calm. Her eyes were sharp, not cold, observant, the kind of eyes that measured things without needing to touch them. A steward stood behind her holding a ledger. Two attendants loaded goods into the cart. She was not a noble lady. Her clothing was too practical for that, but she was clearly not ordinary either. Liang Chen's memories supplied nothing. Sanzi did. He whispered, that is Shen Yulan. Who? Shen family merchant daughter. Their shop supplies inns and households. Her father owns 2 grain stores and a dried goods shop. Important person. Very important person. I straightened unconsciously. Then remembered my clothes were patched, my hands were dirty, and I smelled like field work, boiled greens, and ambition. Shen Yulan walked over. She did not look at me first. She looked at my empty cloth. Then the remaining 2 fresh bundles I had kept aside for quality display. Then my wooden record board. Then the drying trays tied to Sanzi's back. Finally, she looked at me. You sold most of your goods. Her voice was calm. I bowed slightly. Thanks to fortunate customers. She glanced at the record board. You record quantities? Yes. Why? To know what sold, what failed, and what not to repeat. Her eyes shifted slightly. Interest, not admiration, not romance. Interest. That was better. Romance could wait. Money first. She picked up 1 fresh bundle. The leaves are evenly sorted. Yes. No damaged leaves hidden underneath. No. You separate dried goods from fresh goods. Yes. And the dried packets sold out. I paused. How did you know? She looked at the empty section of cloth where the packets had been arranged. The fresh bundles left damp marks. The dried packets left dust. There is only dust left. I stared. Sanzi whispered, Brother Liang, this sister sees everything. He was right. Shen Yulan almost smiled. Do you have more dried greens? Not today. How many can you produce in 7 days? That question struck like thunder. Not, how much is this? Not, can it be cheaper? She asked capacity. A real merchant question. I looked at my current field in my mind. Fast greens. Drying trays. Sanzi's help. Limited water. Limited baskets. Who bow debt? Could I produce enough? If I lied, I might get short-term money and long-term disaster. If I underpromised, I might lose the opportunity. I answered carefully. Fresh bundles, 40 in 7 days. Dried packets, 30. Quality may improve after the next cycle. Her steward looked surprised. Only 40? I nodded. More than that, quality drops. Shen Yulan looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, most farmers promise more. Most farmers hope customers forget. This time, she did smile. A small one, but real. She turned to the steward. Give him a trial order. The steward frowned. Miss, 7 days. 40 fresh bundles. 30 dried packets. If quality remains like today's goods, our shop will buy them. My heart pounded. A trial order. Not riches, but a door. The steward took out coins. Advance payment, Shen Yulan said. For baskets, rope, drying trays, and delivery preparation. He handed me 3 strings of copper. 300 copper coins. My mind went silent. 300 copper was not just money. It was time. Time to repair the hut. Time to buy baskets. Time to make proper drying trays. Time to survive long enough for the next harvest. And if the dried greens sold well during the trial, then maybe one day I could think about the thing that really mattered. Salt. Not seasoning. Not flavor. In this world, salt was preservation. Preservation meant storage. Storage meant selling when others had nothing left. But salt was controlled, expensive, and far beyond a poor farmer like me. For now, even dreaming about it felt expensive. So, I buried that thought deep in my mind. First, survive the 7-day trial. Then think about salt. 300. I had started with 0. Only a few days ago, 14 copper had felt like wealth. This was not wealth yet, but it was capital. Real capital. I accepted the coins with both hands. Thank you, Miss Shen. Her eyes remained calm. Do not thank me. Deliver. Then she turned and walked back to the cart. Sanzi stared after her, then stared at the copper, then stared at me. Brother Liang, he whispered, are we rich? I looked at the 3 strings of copper in my hands. Total current cash, 57 copper from previous sales, 300 copper advance. Total, 357 copper. But obligations, market travel costs, baskets and rope, Sanzi wages. Who bows 3 baskets. Trial order delivery. If I failed, I would owe reputation, money, and possibly my future. I slowly exhaled. No, I said. Sanzi groaned. We are not rich. No. I held the copper tightly. We are in business. He thought about it. Is that better? More dangerous. He nodded. That sounds like you. Before leaving Qingshu town, I stopped beside a small noodle stall. The smell of broth and wheat noodles drifted through the evening air. Sanzi stopped walking. His eyes followed a steaming bowl as it passed in front of him. Then he looked at me, then back at the bowl. He did not say anything. He did not need to. I sighed. 1 bowl of noodles, I told the seller. Sanzi's face lit up. And 1 bun. His expression became even brighter. The meal cost 4 copper. 1 bowl for me. 1 bun for Sanzi. It was not a celebration. Celebrations were for people whose orders had already been completed. This was simply the first proper hot meal I had eaten since waking in this world. The broth was thin. The noodles were uneven. There were only a few pieces of chopped green onion floating on top. It was still the best meal I had seen in days. Sanzi held his bun with both hands and stared at it seriously. Brother Liang. What? If business always tastes like this, I support business. I took another mouthful of noodles. Remember that when the work starts tomorrow. He immediately stopped smiling. When we returned to Qinghe village, the sun had already begun to set. The road was golden. The fields were quiet. For the first time since reincarnating, I did not feel like the world was only trying to crush me. I had money. I had an order. I had a plan. I also had a bully, a half-repaired field, a teenage assistant who negotiated like a bandit, and a growing reputation that could attract both customers and enemies. But progress was progress. At my hut, I counted the coins again. 57 copper from our previous sales. 300 copper from Shen Yulan's advance. Minus 4 copper for the noodles and bun. Current cash. 353 copper. But most of it was not truly mine yet. The advance had a purpose. Baskets. Rope. Drying trays. Delivery costs. Sanzi's wages, food while completing the order, and repairs that could not be delayed forever. I wanted to buy new clothes. Badly. My current tunic had so many patches that the original fabric had become a rumor. But new clothes were dangerous. A poor man wearing rags was ignored. A poor man suddenly wearing clean new cloth became a question. And questions attracted mouths. Mouths attracted ears. Ears attracted people like Hu Bao. So, I made a list of what needed to be bought later. Roof straw, because rain was real. A door bar, because thieves were real. A new water jar, because stomach pain was real. Better tools, because the field was real. Nothing shiny. Nothing pretty. Nothing that announced, please rob me. Sanzi watched me divide the coins into separate piles. Why not just keep it all together? Because money without purpose disappears. He looked personally attacked. Coins can disappear? When hungry boys stand nearby, yes. He looked away. Suspicious. I placed most of the copper into the cracked clay jar and buried it beneath a flat stone inside the hut. Not perfect security, but better than leaving it on the floor. Then I stepped outside. Across the path, I saw Hu Bao watching from a distance. His face was dark. He had seen the merchant cart, or heard about it, or smelled opportunity like a dog smelling meat. Our eyes met. He did not come over. Not yet. That worried me more than if he had shouted. Angry men made noise. Dangerous men waited. That night, as I prepared the drying trays, Uncle Zhao came by. He looked at the field, then at the hut, then at me. You went to town. Yes. You sold well. Better than expected. He nodded slowly. Then be careful. I looked up. He continued, in this village, poverty attracts pity. Small success attracts gossip. Real money attracts hands. I understood. Hu Bao. Hu Bao is one. One. Uncle Zhao's gaze shifted toward the road leading to town. There are others. He did not say more. He did not need to. That same night, far away in Qingshu town, a clerk sat in a small office beside the market registry. His name was Su Wen. He was not high-ranking, not powerful enough to command armies, not rich enough to ignore bribes. But he had a stamp, and in small towns, a stamp could become a weapon. A market guard reported to him casually. A poor farmer from Qinghe village sold goods today. The Shun family gave him an advance. Su Wen paused. A poor farmer? Yes. How much? 3 strings of copper, I heard. Su Wen put down his brush. A slow smile appeared. A poor farmer suddenly earning merchant money. He tapped the table. Interesting. The guard laughed. Lucky man. Su Wen's smile widened. No. Untaxed man. That night, I lay on the straw mat, too tired to sleep. My body still hurt. The hut still leaked. The field still needed work. Hu Bao still existed. The trial order could fail. The money could vanish. The village could turn against me. But I had taken the first step. I had woken up as a dying farmer with 0 copper and 3 dying radishes. Now I had 353 copper, a trial order from the Shun family, a possible future path towards salt, a helper, a field that was slowly recovering, and a reason to survive tomorrow. Was I rich? No. Was I safe? Absolutely not. Was I finally moving? Yes. And that was enough. I looked at the straw ceiling and smiled. In my old life, I had worked hard for other people until I died crossing the road. In this life, I would work hard again. But this time, every weed I pulled, every coin I earned, every bundle I tied, every customer I gained, would be mine. I closed my eyes. For the first time since reincarnation, sleep came easily. Unfortunately, before dawn, Sanzi banged on my door. Brother Liang. I sat up in panic. What? He shouted from outside. A man from town is here. My heart sank. Town? Already? I opened the door. A thin man in clerk's clothing stood outside my hut, smiling politely. Too politely. Behind him stood 2 assistants. On his belt hung a wooden token from the market office. The man looked at my field, then at my hut, then at me. Liang Chen of Qinghe village? I nodded slowly. He smiled. My name is Su Wen. I handle market records for Qingshu town. His eyes drifted past me, briefly surveying the dark interior of the hut. Then his gaze rose back to my face. I heard your business is doing well. The morning air suddenly felt colder. Behind me, Sanzi whispered, Brother Liang, is he a customer? I looked at Su Wen's smile, then at his assistants, then at the wooden token on his belt. I swallowed. No, I said quietly. He is worse. That was when I learned the first rule of making money in this world. Customers came slowly. Enemies came faster. Officials came fastest.